the idea of owning it. Whatever it is that you're dealing with, give it a name. To give something a name gives you power. You see, I didn't know when I was 7 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, and I was having these movements and I was twitching and my chin was rubbing against my collarbone and my neck was getting raw. And I was doing these things that I didn't know why I was doing them, that were uncontrollable. And they just kept happening. It was incredibly frustrating. And I didn't know what it was. But when I was 13 years old, I saw a pediatric neurologist, and that pediatric neurologist diagnosed me with something that I found out was called Tourette syndrome. And it was this moment of relief when I said, okay, it's Tourette syndrome. This is what it is. The reason that I do these things is something called Tourette syndrome. The reason that sometimes I make a strange clicking noise is Tourette syndrome. Now that we know what it is, I can look for treatments for it. Now that I know what it is, it's not some unknown entity that has some sort of power over me. You see, when you're honest with yourself and when you acknowledge that you are dealing with something difficult, something that might feel overwhelming, that is a genuine act of bravery. It really is. I come to you from a place where I assure you I have had to learn how to be brave in my life. And if you are willing to own to yourself, to yourself, so that you say, you know what I'm dealing with, and then name it. Owning that is the first step towards gaining power over it. So I have a little exercise for you. I have a little challenge. Whatever this thing is, whatever this challenge, whatever this overwhelming, or maybe it's not overwhelming, maybe it's just something that you're just dealing with right this moment. Maybe it's just something that's a difficulty and it's a frustration, and you want to learn how to better handle it. Name it. Say it out loud. Take that piece of paper that I was talking about earlier. Maybe you make that list that we were talking about a few minutes ago. And if you have a hard time naming it, write down the elements that make it up. And then maybe it will become more and more clear what you're dealing with. And if you can't give it an actual technical name and say, oh, it appears I'm dealing with this, give it a name that makes sense to you. Just a name that makes sense to you, so that you can say this, and you use whatever word makes sense to you. This is what I'm dealing with. Because the moment you own it, the moment you give it a name,